and they were roommates.
Father of Ultra, they were roommates.
Hello everyone, my name is Smudge8 and this is my channel, Kasual Kaiju Gaming, where I cover all things relating to kaiju and board games, video games, and card games. Now let me tell you a little story about an event I attended recently. This event was a special Pride Month event hosted by my local game store, where you could play any two legendary creatures as though they had partner, obviously, thematic for Pride Month. I thought long and hard about what I wanted to play. First, I imagined doing a double Niv Mizzet because of how self-obsessed he is. Hilarious. However, the longer I thought about it, the more I wanted to do something that I wouldn't be able to do in a normal game of Magic. The idea: fit every crossover Godzilla card in one deck. For those of you that don't know, several years ago during the set Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths, Wizards of the Coast published a set of Godzilla cards that were already existing cards from the set, but retextured as Godzilla characters. And I collected them all, and I really liked them. The plan for the deck. Since most Godzilla cards have Mutate, our plan is to get a ton of value by building a huge Mutate stack, then hit our opponent in the face with it. Question number 1. Who would be our loving couple? My first choice was obviously BioQuartz Space Godzilla, the retexture of Brokos, Apex of Forever. Space Godzilla's function in this deck is very simple. He's just an additional Mutate trigger. Anytime I'm building a big stack and I don't have any more mutants to drop on it, then I could just cast Space Godzilla and get an additional trigger. Additionally, I can cast Godzilla from the graveyard using its Mutate ability, meaning I do not have to pay commander tax. This deck is going to be 5 colors, so that limited my other choices to either King Caesar or Rodan. I ended up choosing King Caesar, Awoken Titan, reskin of Snapdax, Apex of the Hunt, because his 4 damage to target creature and heal 4 life turned out to be very good for dealing with problem creatures. So, here are the rest of the cards we want to include in the deck. These are the Godzilla cards. Every single one of these cards is in the deck, regardless of if it's the best choice for the deck or not. Here are our Godzilla cards that directly synergize with our mutation strategy. All of these are either mutating cards or cards that encourage you to mutate. So these were all really effective cards in the deck. And then there are the cards that don't synergize as well. Sadly, all 3 versions of Godzilla actually ended up in this spot. Some of these are better than others. Probably the worst one is Dorat, the Perfect Pet, because this deck just doesn't care about casting a lot of non-creature spells. I'd say the best of these non-mutation cards, though, is Gigan Cyberclaw Terror, just because I think it's hilarious to steal one of my opponent's cards and turn that into my giant mutated creature. Next up, it's not a mutation deck without mutation. Here is every single other mutate cards I included here. I grabbed as many as I could, but I had to cut some, and I ended up cutting a lot of the ones that would work well with going wide, because this is not a go wide deck, this is a go big deck. But on second thought, a good go-wide deck could be built with this same prompt. Of all the Mutate cards in here, my top 3 are easily Boneyard Lurker, Dreamtail Heron, and Migratory Greathorn. Dreamtail Heron and Migratory Greathorn are awesome because they draw you a card or ramp you one unbasic land every time they mutate, and Boneyard Lurker is probably the strongest mutation in the deck, because every time it mutates, you get to return a permanent from your graveyard to your hand, and if that permanent is another mutate card, you get to trigger him again. You can just build your giant stack back up after it gets killed. Now, obviously, our make one giant monster strategy has some downsides, and that's where the protection comes in. There's a lot of cards in this deck meant to make our creature more durable in various ways so that it doesn't get destroyed by the first removal spell it gets targeted by. Highlighting are Blessed Hippogriff and Dread Linorm. These are honestly not the best cards, but I chose to include them because they have the dual instant and creature types. So early in the game, or when I really need the protection, they can be a protection spell. And then if I'm desperate, they can still be a creature later in the game. Here's the whole suite of other protection spells. All of these either give the creature hexproof, or protection, or indestructible, or in the case of Keep Safe, just straight up counters a spell targeting the creature. So lots of options here. And then we've got a few semi-permanent protection options. We've got Swiftfoot Boots, a Commander Classic. Alpha Authority is also here. I considered cutting it, but I think the flavor was just too good to ignore. And then Mask of Avacyn as a more expensive version of Swiftfoot Boots. Of course, if our goal is to be smacking our opponents with this creature as much as possible, we're going to be left in the open sometimes. So, we've got 2 fogs in the form of Defend the Hearth and Obscuring Haze. And Seedborn Muse is also here because it lets you untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step, which gives us more mana so that we can cast our instants, and untaps our mutate stack so that it can run defense. Obviously, sometimes our giant creature is going to die, and when that happens, we need a plan to rebuild it. Some of this already exists in the mutation cards I've shown off before. As I mentioned, Boneyard Lurker is key for this. If that's not an option, Biolante Plant Beast form, reskin of Nethroi Apex of Death, can return creatures from the graveyard onto the battlefield, so that's but we can still use it to get something started. And then Lord Drakis is also here because whenever he mutates, you can return a target instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. And we have a couple of instants or sorceries that can help us with that. Specifically, our options are Balaged Recovery, which is nice because it's a dual-sided with a land, Recollect, and Under the Skin, which not only returns a card from the graveyard to our hand, but also manifests Dread, which puts a face-down 2/2 creature onto the battlefield that we can either flip or immediately start mutating. Building a big creature is expensive, so we need to have ramp and card draw to support it. By far the best ramp card in this deck is Farseek. Farseek lets you search your library for one land that has a basic land type and put it into the battlefield tapped. This is awesome because there are a lot of lands in the deck that are not basic lands but do have basic land types and can tap for multiple colors of mana. Yavimaya Dryads can do the same thing except it only searches for forests, and it also functions as a nice base for our mutation because it has Forest Walk, and we can give a forest to an opponent to make our mutation stack unblockable. Our other cards are Rootweaver Druid, which just is a very good ramp on a creature so it can still function as the base for our mutations. Planar Genesis, which is just cheap and it either gets us a land or gets us another card that we need to keep our strategy rolling. And lastly, Wickerfolk Thresher, which whenever it attacks, if you have enough different card types in your discard, it will ramp you. Card draw comes in the form of several enchantments. On top of the aforementioned card draw from mutations, we have Primal Empathy, which lets you draw a card if you have the biggest creature on the battlefield, and if you don't, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, so hopefully you'll have the biggest creature next turn. Reconnaissance Mission is also very important. Similar to Wickerfolk Thresher, this is a card that encourages you to attack because whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card. And then Frostcliff Siege is a modal spell, but most of the time we're going to choose the Jeskai mode, which does the same thing as Reconnaissance Mission. And here's a couple miscellaneous cards that I included to flesh out the deck. I added Damnation to be a board wipe in case things get hairy, and Scheming Symmetry to be a fun tutor that both gets me what I want, but also sets up an opponent. Now, the land base. A large portion of the lands are non-basic lands because this is a 5-color deck, so we need to cover as many colors as possible. We have all 5 Triomes, which are great targets for Farseek. We also have Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, as well as 3 different landscape cards. Each of these landscape cards taps for colorless, but can be sacrificed to get a basic land of one of 3 types into the battlefield tapped. And then our third group of non-basic lands is just a bunch of other lands that have the basic land types on them. Canyon Slough, Fetid Pools, Irrigated Farmland, Sunken Hollow, and Thundering Falls all have some mix of basic land types on them. We also have my one single fetch land I own, Verdant Catacombs, which can search for a swamp or forest, which is once again great for grabbing all of our non-basic lands that have basic land types. Alright, so I'm recording this as I'm leaving the game store after the event. I got 3 games in, didn't win a single one, but it was good. I had fun. I almost won the first event I played, the first game I played, but one of the other players had 2 parts of a infinite combo in his deck. So he got that put together, and that was it. Other 2 games went fine. And I did have a lot of fun, and that's the most important part. So that's how the event went. The results, when the deck hits what it wants to hit, it's amazing, which isn't saying a lot, because basically every deck is like that, but it still felt so good. Mana was really rough sometimes because a lot of the Godzilla mutations have very specific mutate costs that require double mana, and I struggled to get the double of one color that I needed. Card draw was also very rough in this deck, and I often found myself playing with only a couple cards in hand, and I'd prefer to have more options than that. If I was to rebuild this deck, what I'd change is I'd remove the landscapes. When I put these in, I thought they would also search for my triomes, but they're only supposed to search for basic land cards. So I'd rather replace them with some basic lands instead. Mask of Avacyn, like I said, this was a more expensive, less effective version of Swiftfoot Boots, and I got to use it in one game, and it just was too expensive. And then lastly, I would actually remove a Chittering Harvester because, get this, I accidentally put 2 Chittering Harvesters in the deck.
And they were roommates.
Now, with those takeouts, what would I put in? My number 1 thing I'd put in would be Chromatic Lantern, because with the struggles the deck had with landing the right colors, it would be beautiful, gorgeous. And the extra funny thing is, for this event, I got a Chromatic Lantern promo, and I didn't put it in the deck. I would also add some tutors that let me search for creatures. That way I can get my best mutator cards out and into play as soon as possible. And then I'd add some more card draw. I'd have to mess around with that a lot to find the best option. But my examples here are Scroll Thief and Thieving Otter. Now, obviously, using 2 Godzilla creatures would not be legal. So let's talk about some alternate commanders. My number 1 pick would be Surgeon Commander here. Whenever you augment, enchant, or mutate a creature you control, you draw a card, and he can be tapped to add 1 mana. So this would just make the deck run so smoothly. However, he is a silver bordered card, so not everybody would be comfortable playing with him. So let's talk about some black border options that you could also use. My 2 best picks would be Ramos the Dragon Engine and Gigantha the Wellspring. Ramos the Dragon Engine is really good because this deck plays a lot of multicolor permanents, and so you'd get a lot of +1/+1 counters, and you could just either leave them on him and let him be part of the mutation stack, or you could remove them and get a bunch of mana you can use to keep mutating. Gigantha the Wellspring is just as good, though, because you can tap it to add 5 mana, but that mana can only spent to pay colored mana costs. So what's extra interesting about Gigantha is that it has the companion effect of no card in your starting deck has more than one of the same mana symbol in its mana cost. So if you can meet that, then you can actually basically have 2 commanders anyway. Now that would require taking out some of the Godzilla cards that have double single color costs. But if you're really committed to doing the mutate stack, that's probably a good choice. Other commanders that looked like they'd be fun was Jared Carthalion, because he can +1 to create a 3/3 Kavu, so that gives you a good base to start mutating on, and his other loyalty abilities are also pretty good. Or just Omnath Locus of All for being a big 5-color creature that can serve as a good base for mutations. Or if you want to be insane, and I kind of do, you could always run Corona False God as your commander, and not only have a giant mutate stack, but have a giant mutate stack that passes to each player during their turn. As far as the actual future of this deck, though, I'm considering building it as a party box. A party box is a deck where everyone plays from one communal deck. So this deck would basically just be everybody trying to build the biggest creature they can to trample over their opponents and win the game, and that honestly sounds very fun to me. I don't know if I'll ever get around to it, but if that's something that interests you, let me know in the comments below. And that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and go out there and make it a great day. And welcome to the end of the video, where we're going to be opening Ultraman? So, for the past month, I've been opening at least 1 pack of Ultraman cards every day and posting it on my shorts. Since today's short is replaced by an actual video, we're going to open it here as a little, what's the right word for it? A little, well, just a little treat. Alright, so looks like we got Ultraman Mebius, Decker, Trigger, the Champion of the Fierce Fight, one of the 2 cards that makes Mebius so fantastic. That one's really good. Tiga, Blazor, yeah! Protector Gears, Eero, Ultraman Z, COV the Space Combat Beast. He's a funny looking dude there. And for our rares, we have Ultraman Decker, Flash type. This is Decker's standard card draw card. That's pretty good. And Dinosaur. I actually have a lot of copies of this guy, and I don't know if he's actually any good or not. I kind of doubt it, because he's just a kaiju with a armed rank up ability, but I still haven't gotten to play this game a lot, so I don't know. Alright, Pack 2. So this is the Booster Pack Series 2, Vortex of Crimson and Azure. Alright, code card. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, Alright, so we've got Ultraman Rosso, Dyna, Hunter Knight Suguri, another Rosso, Blue, Mebius, Suguri, Pride of Guys, and for our first rare, we have an Ultraman Mebius. Nice. This is, like I said, Mebius is one of the strongest archetypes in the game, and so getting any Mebius is really good. Speaking of getting Mebius, Hunter Knight Suguri, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but this guy is specifically made to be Mebius support, so he's pretty good as well. And then our last one is, it's an AP, so Art Parallel Ultraman Gaia V2. While this character's battle opponent, it's a Kaiju killer. I do love the Kaiju killers, even if their use is niche. I always think they're really cool. So yeah, we got a good hit there. And last but not least, Ultraman the Card Game Booster Set 3,
Shadow of Undying Vengeance. Alright. So I'm going to try doing 1, 2, 3. Alright. So we got Ultraman Angeed, Ultraman Belial, Dark Lugiel, Ultraman Nexus, Ultraman Zero, Ultraman Belial, Jugless Juggler, Pedenium Zeton, The Scene, Man and Monster. This is discard 1 card from your hand, give your single decker a BP grade increase by 1 for this turn. Alright, and Ultraman Z, Beta Crescent Slash, nice. Ella King, the Space Monster, pretty good. And let's see if we got a bonus rare. Oh, ooh, we did. Oh, I love the foil on this one. This is Ultraman Orb. When this character enters play, you may draw 2 cards to give one of your orb plus 1,000 BP for this turn. So this guy lets you draw cards and gives you a power increase. So that's pretty nasty. So we got a couple of good hits here. We got our Ultraman Orb and our Ultraman Gaia. Anyway, that'll be it for today. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and you all go out there and make it a great day.